A brief history. How dark were the Dark Ages? The perception of the European Middle Ages as a time of intellectual stagnation, cultural decline, and social turmoil is complicated. This period, spanning roughly from the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century to either the 10th century or as late as the Italian Renaissance, depending on who you ask, is often characterized by nothing more than wars, plagues, and superstition. Whilst those elements certainly did exist in the European Middle Ages, it only presents us with part of the picture, and also discounts the fact that most so-called great civilizations experienced some, if not all, of those things. However, its relationship with Roman culture is key to understanding what is meant by the Dark Ages. The term is often used to contrast the widespread achievements of the Roman Empire with the perceived decline in these areas following its collapse. In addition, the term dark also touches upon the limited written records of this period when compared to, say, the Roman Empire, so in this sense, one would probably have to concede this point. During the Roman era, there were considerable, arguably transcendent, achievements in architecture, economics, engineering, governance, and the arts, creating a flourishing civilization. And in light of these achievements, Rome was subsequently placed on a near unobtainable pedestal for centuries and millennia to come. However, despite the undeniable greatness of Rome, it still begs the question, did Europe really descend into a dark age, leading from the 5th century into the centuries to come? Firstly, when we talk about the collapse of the Roman Empire, or the fall of Rome, it is referring to the fall of the Western Roman Empire, and whilst this did collapse, though this topic in itself is complicated enough, the idea of the Dark Ages occurring because of the fall of Rome fails to recognise that the Eastern Roman Empire, which was richer and more powerful of the two, existed through the medieval period, all the way up to the Renaissance, and whilst the majority of its territory was in Asia Minor, the Middle East, and North Africa, it held considerable territories, intermittently, in Europe as well. If we set this point aside and look at the other kingdoms and states of Europe during this time, the picture becomes even clearer, not darker. In this period, Europe witnessed innovations in agriculture, such as the introduction of the heavy plough and the three-field system, as well as advancements in metallurgy and watermill technology. From an artistic point, some of the finest buildings in history were built in this period, and influential artistic movements sprung up, such as the Carolingian Renaissance in the 9th and 10th centuries. So whilst there were undoubtedly troubles and setbacks during this period, there are also cultural flowerings and advancements in technology. So as we can see, labelling this period as the Dark Ages is problematic on multiple fronts. Now this leads us to who coined the term the Dark Ages and why. Petrarch, a Tuscan scholar, coined the idea of the Dark Age in the 1330s, at least in a secular sense. Light and darkness were common themes for Christian thinkers to contrast good and evil, but Petrarch applied it in a socio-cultural sense. He revered classical antiquity for its cultural achievements, contrasting it with his own era, which he perceived as lacking in greatness. This led to Renaissance humanists, influenced by Petrarch, to view the preceding 900 years as a period of stagnation, seeing history through the lens of cultural development rather than religious epochs. Fast forward a couple of centuries, this idea was adopted by 18th and 19th century European writers who used it as a way of marking their civilizations against the past and contemporary civilizations too. Influenced by Enlightenment ideals, they viewed the Dark Ages as a stark contrast to the perceived progress of their own time. However, as we have shown, this so-called Dark Age was more complicated than being characterized solely by these terms. Though it can be justly argued that the European Middle Ages did not reach the collective heights of the Roman Empire, this doesn't mean that the era was stagnant and without achievement. With the examples we have given, it would be wrong to characterize the Dark Ages as solely dark, and though it did experience its fair share of wars, famine, and superstition, so too did the great civilizations of the past. Moreover, this so-called Dark Age produced some of the finest works in writing, art and architecture, and also made technological progress too. And with this considered, it comes as no surprise to learn that most modern historians reject the term the Dark Age altogether. Thank you for watching. If you would like to see more on a wide variety of interesting topics, then like, comment and subscribe.